Well, we all go a little mad sometimes, and now it's time to go mad and rank the Psycho franchise. If you've been following me for the past month or so, I've been going through the entire Psycho franchise, all 4 original films and the 1998 remake. And the past couple of videos I've been doing in conjunction with Brian Lomax from Brian Lomax Movie Talk. He's doing a ranking as well, which drops right now, the same second you're watching this. So check the video description below or the pinned comment down below and check out Brian's ranking as well once you're done watching this video. He's the Psycho super fan of our little group, so I'm not sure if his ranking's gonna be any different than mine. I feel like we'll be pretty in line, but I don't know, Brian's a little crazy, so he might slip a little audible in there. So check out how his thoughts differ from mine, and he'll probably get a lot more thoughts, like a lot more insight into some of these movies than I'm gonna give you as kind of a new casual fan to the franchise. So 5 films in the Psycho franchise, the saga of Norman Bates and the Bates Motel. Starting right off at the bottom for me, should be no surprise, and that is the 1998 remake. Now I will say, on its own merit, this movie is probably not the worst technical movie of this list. My main issue with it is that this movie is absolutely pointless in my mind. There's some things that I like better about it. I think that Julianne Moore's version of the sister is a little bit better, a little more entertaining. I actually like William H. Macy in the role of Harbogast. There's some cool modern spins to some of the things that they do, kind of bringing it into 1998. This is not a dumpster fire movie where I'm just miserable the entire time that I watch it. It's basically like watching the original movie. It's shot for shot, but the casting of Norman Bates especially, bringing it into color, I feel like some of the shots aren't nearly as effective, like the shower scene. The fact that you already know the twist, going through beat by beat the exact same storyline just kind of makes it why am I watching this? I already know what's gonna happen. Why can't I just watch the original? So the fact that it's literally a shot for shot remake with the exception of maybe 5% changes, it just deems it, why does this thing exist? And on that merit alone, it's the worst to me. Some will argue that it's still a great movie because it's the same movie as the 1961. You might hear Brian say that. I'm on the other end of the camp that says you literally just copy and pasted a really great classic movie that everybody's familiar with. You get no credit for that. Sorry. Number 5. Number 4 is going to be Psycho for the Beginning. Now, while not being nearly as bad as you might expect a direct-to-TV Psycho sequel, it's actually halfway decent. The positives with this one is that you get Norman Bates, you get Anthony Perkins back in the main role, does as good as always. He's a much smaller piece of the movie, but his aspect of the storyline, as well as the way that they decide to, it's kind of a prequel and sequel, and the sequel side of the storyline, how they have extended his storyline and where they decide to wrap it up, I think is actually really good and really satisfying. All of my issues pretty much come from the prequel side, where I'm traditionally not a fan of prequels. I don't like questions that I'm not asking being answered for me. I would much rather fill in those gaps myself because 9 times out of 10, my answer is more interesting than the answer you chose to give me. So I'm not a fan of prequels, so it's automatically behind the curve on that. Although I really like Olivia Hussey and she definitely goes for it in this role. It's a little over the top and hokey sometimes. I don't really care for the guy from It as an actor at all. I forget his name. But anything I've ever seen him in aside from E.T. Why did I say It? E.T. The guy from E.T. Never been a fan of him, so I don't think he's any good here. I think that he's actually really hokey, not nearly as good as Anthony Perkins, and it shows when you have them both in the same movie. And it's a decent enough movie. The budget is way lower, you can tell. But overall, for what they were given, for what they were working with, pretty decent. Not a dumpster fire by any stretch of the imagination, but it is number 4. Coming in at number 3 is Psycho 3. Watch the guitar, bitch. Psycho 3 is a sequel that definitely tries to hold on to the style and the feel of Psycho 2, which was a great unexpected sequel, and try to continue that storyline in a way that somewhat makes sense with the way that they left it at Psycho 2. You get Norman kind of descending back into the madness with Mother. You get some really odd people coming to the hotel or the motel, and he kind of has to deal with it both as Norman and his mother. You get a love interest with this nun who's left the convent. Where the negatives come in for this movie is the nun storyline, for one, goes absolutely nowhere, and it's a gigantic wasted opportunity because it's so interesting the way that they set those 2 characters up as love interests. It's a little bit more hokey in the way that it's brought forward. Anthony Perkins, I don't know if this was his only movie that he directed, but it's the only one he's directed in this franchise, and it feels like he's not as strong in the role when he's directing himself. Still good, but not nearly as good as the first 2 films, so that holds it back a bit. The third act is great. I love when you actually get to see Norman in his mother outfit, talking like Mother, the whole scene where she's in the shadows and she like moves the picture back. There's great stuff in this movie, just a mixed bag. Overall, a mixed Psycho movie that has great ideas, the execution not quite as solid as the first two movies. And now we come down to the top two, and this is where we separate the men from the boys, I guess, where you have the classic horror aficionados that love Psycho, the 1960 Alfred Hitchcock classic, and beloved as this movie that kind of birthed the slasher genre and gave us the horror genre that we love in slashers, and just set the bar for a lot of movies to come after that. And then you have the people that love Psycho 2 as a much more kind of 80s slasher centric versus the classic movie, a little bit more gory, a little bit more twisty in the storyline. Yeah, so you basically, when you have people that have watched this franchise, for the most part, you're gonna have people that either prefer Psycho or prefer Psycho 2 for very different reasons. And where I land in that, my number 2 is going to be the original classic 1960 Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Hear me out. Don't unsubscribe. Hear me out. I actually appreciated this movie and enjoyed it much more watching it to review it. There's something about when you watch a movie to review it and you start analyzing things and you start picking out things to talk about that sometimes you can watch it with those goggles on and see things you didn't see before. Sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's good, and it was good with the 1960 Alfred Hitchcock Psycho. When I first saw this movie, it was hard to get into it because it was so old. I can appreciate it more than I enjoyed it. I get why it's so important, but kind of having the common knowledge, understanding that Norman is the killer and he's, you know, portraying his mother, I kind of knew where the movie was going. There was no surprises, and some of the shots and camera work felt a little bit dated. When I watch it now, that still exists, but I enjoy the movie much more as just a great film overall. But where this slides into number 2, because I do think this is one of the best horror films ever made, I would agree with that. I feel like the second half is not nearly as good. Once the shower scene hits, the movie takes a bit of a dip in my interest, and that's mainly because of Marion Crane's sister and her boyfriend. I don't think they're nearly as good as actors or as characters as Marion Crane was. Some of the stuff with Harbogast is very dated, especially the whole camera angle where he's falling down the stairs. The whole thing at the end where you get the explanation from the psychiatrist for like 5 minutes long about, he basically exposition dumps the entire explanation of what's going on with Norman Bates. I don't think it's quite necessary. I feel like maybe not in 1960, but audiences nowadays, certainly, they're like, I get it. Oh shit, he's still talking. Okay. Really enjoyed this film, but some aspects of it just haven't dated as well for me personally as the movie above it. And that leaves my number 1, and that is Psycho 2, which is one of the most unexpected, awesome sequels that I've ever seen. Like before I'd even seen this film, I knew that there was a couple of sequels to the Psycho franchise, and for whatever reason, maybe it's the negative stigma of sequels to classics like Psycho, I felt like these movies were just gonna be trash. And when I finally watched Psycho 2, I was like, God damn, that is a really good movie and a great follow-up that really merits its existence alongside this hailed classic of Psycho. I love the storyline of Norman being back, like he's healed, he's back to normal. And you have these people that are trying to draw Mother back out. That's a great aspect to take. I really like his relationship with Meg Tilly. The kills are great in this movie, like the whole, Lila Crane, I believe is her name. The whole knife in the fucking face is just classic Carnage candy. Love that stuff. And Anthony Perkins is as good, if not better, in the role of Norman in this than he was in the original. He gets much more to do, much more to chew on in this movie, so it's not quite the same thing if you're gonna balance the scales, but I enjoy seeing the different emotions he goes through in Psycho 2 more than I do Psycho 1. I love the way the movie wraps up. I think it's shot well. So many things that I love about Psycho 2. That, yeah, there's a couple of things, watch my full review, there's a couple of things that definitely hold it back that don't age quite as well, or things that I don't think is completely successful, but overall, rewatchability plays a huge factor in my rankings, and Psycho 2 is by far the Psycho movie that, if I'm in the mood for a Norman Bates tale, I'm taking Psycho 2 off the shelf probably 9 times out of 10, so that is the big thing that gives it the edge over the original, and puts it for me at number 1. So what do you guys think of the Psycho franchise? Are you a fan of this franchise? Have you only seen the classic? Do you feel like the classic's overrated? Is one of the sequels your favorite? Do you like the remake better than the original? Are you one of those people? Not saying you're wrong, just let me know down below in at least a paragraph why you like that one better. So Tell me what your guys' ranking is down in the comment section below. Give me some reasons why. Don't just give me a list of 1 through 5. It's a little bit more interesting to find out why you like them versus just scrolling past a bunch of numbers. Be sure to check out Brian Lomax's ranking. I guarantee we're gonna have at least a couple of movies out of place. But like I said, he's the Psycho super fan, where I'm a much more newer casual fan. So you'll get 2 different perspectives here. So check his stuff out, hit the subscribe button, tell him that Cody sent you there. Also, please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button on this channel if you haven't already become a subscriber. Tons of good horror content that you're gonna love. Also, check the video description down below for social media links like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and my Patreon page, which is a great way to give back to this channel, help this channel grow, and get cool exclusive content for your eyes only if you decide to become a patron, as well as my Teespring shelf. So scroll just a little bit down from the video. You might be able to see it already. And you have my shelf of merchandise with all of my different designs put together by the awesome Woody Bowen, a good friend of mine. Check that out down below. A ton of different merchandise that you guys can have down there. And use a promo code, which is good for the rest of this month, AS Launch, for Autop Stream Launch. So AS Launch, and that will give you $5 off all of my merchandise for the rest of this month, ending on October 1st. So take advantage, guys. And as always, if you want to check out some more of my content, please click right over here for all of that psycho goodness.